They said it was impossible. They said,
you can't put together the most elite team of comic book reviewers on the planet and do, a podcast or something like that?
Despite all that, today we can proudly announce. Yeah, they were right. We couldn't do it. So instead, we brought you the most vile, ignorant, unprofessional group of comic book enthusiasts we could find. This is Panel to Panel, the Game Rage Magazine comic podcast.
Back again with the continuance of the continuation of mixing it up and doing something a little different. This is Panel to Panel. My name is Josh. I'm here today with good buddy Adam.
Yes.
And today we're going to be starting out with a new thing, V For Vendetta.
Indeed.
Issue number 1. And this one's dense as fuck.
It is.
There's a lot of density happening here. But man, back in 1988 when this came out, this was like, you got your fucking money's worth for that 18 cents or whatever this was back then.
Yeah, whatever it costs. I mean, shit, just even the subject matter alone, because most comics were trivial bullshit that you would get. Bad guy does something, good guy saves the day. This is real stakes, man.
Yeah, man, this is real stakes for a country.
Yeah.
And people, the freedom of people,
philosophical,
man.
social issues.
Yeah, off the chains. But anyways, before we get into it, if you want to listen to all our other stuff, you can go to GameRageMagazine.com. You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Game Rage Magazine, Twitter/X at Game Rage Mag, YouTube. Y'all have been showing up and hitting it hard on the YouTube. We appreciate it. Keep it up. Keep going. Keep working. If you like anime, you can go listen to the Anime Syndicate podcast, and you can follow Frank at anime_syndicate_podcast. And if you like music, you can go listen to Adam at the All Gas No Trash podcast. And you can follow him on Instagram at All Gas No Trash Official. And just because we're experimenting and doing something new, if you like Star Wars, go listen to the Game Rage Star Wars podcast. We just restarted it, and we said if we get 15 downloads on the first episode within the first 7 days, within the newest episode in the first 7 days, we were going to restart it. So if we hit it, we'll be doing that, and I think it's pretty much a done deal. We're probably going to be doing it. But anyways, just go check it out, because there will be more to come there if you like Star Wars. All right, now that that's out of the way, let's move along to V For Vendetta, and we get the cover of, which is crazy, back in 1988, man, when this came out, and no one knew anything about what the fuck this was, right? They just have a mask, which I'm sure people didn't even know what the fuck this was. Nope. Just got some weird mask with a mustache and a little fucking D'Artagnan fucking little thing on your chin. And then you've got a wig and then like some makeup and like a fucking bunch of lights on one of those mirrors that's like for actresses when they get or strippers when they, get their makeup on. And it gets right into it.
It does. This is a book from Alan Moore and artist David Lloyd. I can't say I'm too familiar with David Lloyd. I'm not well versed in his shit, but in any case, I'm sure he is fit for the job because this is a very popular book. I don't know if it's cult status, because I mean, Guy Fawkes masks are everywhere, especially with Anonymous and people just trying to, any type of like social movement, you usually see these masks and shit. So I think it's probably like a cultural pinpoint at this point. But I don't know if people actually read the comics, so I'm not really sure. I don't really know.
Yeah, I do think that the mask has been co-opted by a lot of movements attempting to be revolutionary, because that's what the Guy Fawkes whole thing is. So anyway, we get into it, and basically you've got the voice of fate is talking to everybody and basically saying that it's the 5th of November, 1997. All right.
Yeah, and for the sake of brevity, we'll just kind of gloss over the shit. So we're just kind of shown the mundanity of England in 1997 in the context of the V for Vendetta universe. We're in a surveillance state where there's security cameras everywhere, and it's funny because it says for your protection.
Yeah, it says that. It's all for you.
Yeah, it's all for the protection of really for the government, but they're saying it's for you. And then we get Evie Hammond, who is the character that is, if you've seen the film, this is the character that Natalie Portman plays, contrasted by the fact that in the movie, Natalie Portman, I think, is like an intern, or she works at the network that Louis Prothero works at.
Yeah.
Who's the voice of fate that we come to learn, we later come to find out about. So Evie Hammond is actually a hooker. There's no other way to put it.
She works at like the manufacturing weapons shop or whatever.
Right.
But it doesn't pay her enough money. And I mean, we do find out later like how she got into that, but she has to go fuck dudes on the side to try to like make money because she doesn't make enough money.
She doesn't make enough money, right? So
she's literally getting ready to go hooking on the street, and it's intertwining between her getting ready and V essentially getting ready,
dressed up to play his role, the villain. It is rather so that whole exchange when you read the book in the first couple pages, the voice of fate. And I think, at least for me, the thing that I got out of it was that this voice is to demonstrate security and that everything is okay. Because it's so, like, the things seem like inconsequential overall, talking about like the weather, things that are happening on the news. It's like, everything's okay. Everything's okay.
Well, I think it's also to display to people like, hey, this is why you comply, because we know everything.
Yeah.
Like he says, it will start raining at exactly this time and it will stop at this time. And there's a point later on in this where it's like the time is whatever and it just started raining. Like it's like, oh, because they know.
They know,
like,
yeah.
And there's something to do with like, I think they also control the weather too. That's how they can do this and say that they know. Because they did something with the weather. It was talking about the nukes or whatever when they went off. But anyway, Evie goes out and she's gonna try to hook, and it turns out that her first guy she approaches is a fucking cop. She fucking goes and hits off an undercover pig, and I also have to say, I know they're supposed to be in England, but I do think it's fucking hilarious that you don't see anyone smoking cigarettes in this book. They're only smoking pipes, and that's fucking hilarious. Like, I don't know if that's a real British thing or if that's just how they did this, but
yeah,
that was funny. So
hold on. It's also noted in one of the panels at the start of chapter 1 where it says Parliament's a cold shadow falls on Westminster Bridge, and she shivers. There was power here once, power that decided the destiny of millions, implying that Parliament was once the house that government was held. I guess implying that this current state of government is like an authoritative or authoritarian regime that nobody goes there except if they're looking for hookers.
Right, yeah, basically. And what's funny is, ironically, in actual Congress, like, that's where you go to find hookers. People who will fucking take money to do things. So, had to get that. If you like politics, go listen to No Party Preference. Anyway, so basically, she's like, oh shit, you're a fingerman, all right? Which, great fucking name for goddamn cops. A fingerman. Oh yeah, you're the finger. You finger these ones. And also, you know, she was trying to get fucked by this dude, and he's the fingerman. So like, that's pretty funny. And so basically, they're about to like roll her up and just be like, oh, actually, we were here on an operation, but you know what? Fuck it. Now we get to do what we want. And she's like, hey man, don't fuck me, or are you gonna, please don't fuck me, mister, or please don't kill me. And he's like, oh, see, that's the thing. We're gonna fuck you and kill you. So like, awesome.
Yeah, I mean, because who's gonna oppose the government, and who's gonna care anything like that? And then we have this very cool fucking introduction of V that you can. The
multiplying villainies of nature do swarm upon him. That's what he says. This is the opening fucking line. And listen, if you're in a fucking alley about to kill a hooker and you're the cops and you hear that, you have to know you're gonna die. Like, you have to know that there's no alternative but that. And then he continues on and says, and fortune on his damned quarrel smiling showed like a rebel's whore. And then the cops are like, who the fuck is this? And obviously this was made in 1988, but the cop, one replies, I don't know. Must have been some kind of retard that got out of the hospital.
I don't know if you would be retarded if you can recite
fucking Shakespearean sonnets like a motherfucker, from memory. And V goes on. I think we will read these lines because like they're fucking great.
They're great. Yeah.
He says, "But alas, too weak for brave Macbeth. Well, he deserves that name." And the cop goes to grab his hand, and he's telling him like, "Hey man, you're in big trouble. We're the cops." And he says, "Keep your hands off." And as he pulls his hand, he takes the whole fucking hand with him. And he's like, "What the fuck?" And V goes on to say, disdaining fortune with his brandished steel, like valor's minion carved out his passage till he faced the slave. And he's looking right face to face at Evie. And she's also only 16 too. Like I think in England, that is like the age of consent in England, I think.
Yeah.
But that's still weird. Like I still like kind of like I don't know about this. Like I know it was made in the 80s and that's their age of consent, but it's still a little weird. So he goes on to say, which ne'er shook hands nor bade farewell to him as he starts shooting tear gas out of his handless fucking robe arm or whatever. And these guys are basically, and he's escorting her out, and basically these guys are like, oh, Jesus Christ, it's fucking tear gas. And he says, man, I got his hand, what do I do with it? And it fucking explodes. It just detonates. And the way they drew this was actually very cool, because it's like, he's got a hole in the middle of him, and then it's like, you can see he's just about to be incinerated, like, it's gonna be toast. And they're like, oh, fuck, we don't know what the fuck just happened. And basically, V takes this Evie up, and she's basically just like, I don't want to say, I mean, she's already infatuated with him at this moment. The second he said that thing, and she said, oh, like when he said he said face to face with the slave, and then she's like, oh, like, I mean, I shouldn't say this because she's 16, but she was like, oh, like squirt, like, and so she says, you rescued me like in those book stories. Oh, and he says, me? I'm the king of the 20th century. I'm the boogeyman, the villain, the black sheep of the family. And then she's just like, okay, whatever, fucking weirdo. And she's like, I didn't think anybody came around here to, like, get hookers, basically. He's like, but tonight is special. Tonight is a celebration, a grand opening where you never taught the rhyme. And then he goes on to say the classic rhyme. Remember the 5th of November, the gunpowder treason and plot. I know of no reason why the gunpowder treason and the fucking parliament explodes in the background should ever be forgot. And then she's like, oh shit, the Parliament houses? Did you do that? And he's just like, I did that.
That was me.
That be me. Yeah. Be me, V. Just blew up Parliament. Poggers.
Blowing up Parliament Poggers.
And so then he says, yeah, I did that, but there's more. And the fireworks throw up in the name of V.
V-shape.
The V-shape.
Yeah.
And basically, she's like, ooh, fireworks. Oh, they're so beautiful. And everybody loses their shit. Everybody's looking around and they're like, the fuck is that? And basically, that's when you get that line. It is precisely 12:07 a.m. It begins to rain, just as they said on the radio broadcast. And V tells her, there, the overture is finished. Come, we must prepare for the first act. And she's like, oh, shit, me? And basically, this is when we get into the introductions of like the government-esque type people, and you've got, I mean, they're all referred to, they're like departments of the head, I guess.
Well, it's like an anatomical body. They describe the government as like an anatomical body. You have the fingermen, who are the police.
They're like the hands of the government, the force.
Yeah, then you have the mouth, which is Louis Prothero, the prophet of the airwaves, or the voice of fate. And then there's the other gentlemen who I forget their names, but they were. I don't know if they say who the I don't know if they say who the leader is.
I don't think they say his actual name.
Okay. I forget. But then, anyways, he's basically the head of the government, and he has all his extremities reporting back to him. And are we gonna go over?
So, well, I mean, we don't have to go over everything, but you basically got like the nose or the eye, which is basically like I feel like it's kind of like their CIA or like they're the ones that are gathering all the intelligence.
Well,
and then,
like the camera footage.
Yeah, it's like that kind of shit. And then you've got the nose or the ears, which are basically the ones that they're doing all the phone surveillance and all the wiretapping and everything, and which is kind of like the NSA maybe. And then you've got the nose, which seems to be like the what's that called? When the cops do it, the crime scene investigation. There's a name for that. Forensics. They're like the ones who sniff shit out. Like, let's do some tests on this shit and see what we can find and blah blah blah. And basically, that's what we get. And they always say this thing at the end. England prevails.
England prevails. Yeah.
England prevails. And he's like, well, we've heard from the rest of the head. He's like, and this guy, Mr. Almond, right? Which is the guy who's in charge of he's in charge of the fingerman, right? Or what does this guy actually do?
I forget.
Yeah, I don't remember, but...
thank you, Mr. Finch. The three of you will inform me of any further developments and await my directive. England prevails, gentlemen. Mr. Almond, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what he does, but... Basically, he's telling Mr. Almond that, like, you gotta figure this shit out. Like, this is on you, buddy. And then England prevails. Now, yes, leader, English prevails. And then they call him leader, too, like, which is just like, they don't call him president, they don't call him fucking king, they just call him leader, right? Like, that's his name.
Yeah, so he gets the rap from the leader, and he says, you fucked this, we're fucked. This is a propaganda disaster.
Oh, yeah.
Parliament being blown up, that's not gonna look well on us, and you need to find a way to fix it, so fucking fix it, you bastard.
Yeah, basically. And so he goes straight over to the Mouth headquarters, basically, and he goes in on them when they're in the studio about to record the Fate.
Oh, you are right. It is
the fingerman, right? Isn't he the finger?
Well, no, I was gonna say the part about the anatomy. All these things have to do with the head, with the exception of like the fingerman.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, basically, he goes on to say, like, well, we're doing this broadcast, or we're getting this broadcast ready. And he's like, what are you guys going to say about this shit? About the thing blowing up? And he's like, don't worry. We're going to put it out on the 8 o'clock broadcast. Essentially, we're going to say that, it was just scheduled demolition to, avoid traffic congestion. And then he's like, what about, well, he's saying, we're just running it through with Lewis. And he's like, who the fuck is Lewis? And he's like, it's Lewis Prothero. He's the voice of the Fate, man. He's the man, the myth, and the legend. And that's when we get to, it's chapter 2, The Voice. And he goes on doing the introduction, which, or the recording of the thing. And one of the things that we find out, I think it's a little bit later on, but like we find out that they record these 2 days in advance. Like they don't record these the day of or whatever. They'll just add shit to it. If it needs to get added, like if something like this, they're going to add it in to the broadcast that they had already previously recorded. So he's asking about what are they going to say about the fireworks, and he's like, oh man, Fate doesn't think we should eat, which Fate is the like computer or whatever, right? It's like the supercomputer that's like running the fucking, the whole government essentially at this point. And so he says, Fate doesn't think we should even mention it. And if anyone asks later, we'll just say it was a weird effect of the blast. Ha ha, sweet. Like, cover. The mouth's got this shit. This is our job, man. Just chill, man.
Yeah, and this guy Dascombe is the part of the television or propaganda machine.
Yeah.
And he's kind of disseminating this information to Mr. Almond. And he's like, have you heard that Lewis Prothero likes dolls?
Yeah. Like, what a fucking dickhead, too. Like, yeah, man, he likes dolls, man. Well, cool, he collects dolls or some shit.
Yeah, so
and
then...
that is, I was like, who the fuck cares about this? But then I'm like, this comes into play later.
Yeah, so Mr. Almond's like, all television people are sensitive, quote unquote.
He's like, I don't know why the leader even tolerates your asses. And he's like, but the leader is the most sensitive one of us all. And basically, I really think he's really just calling him gay. I think that's what he's telling, because obviously in this universe, in this version of England, they got rid of everybody. Gays, minorities, gays, anyone who was like not basically a straight white got fucking sent to concentration camps, essentially.
Yeah.
So he basically is like, oh man, once you finish planning to explain how a single guy could kill 3 fingermen and blow up Parliament, man, I bet he was very sensitive.
And he's got like this real funny smirk on his face. He's like, oh, bitter almond, referring to his last name.
Yeah, and then Almond calls him a degenerate, which is fucking great.
Yeah, I like this guy.
Yeah, this guy's fucking hilarious.
He's got like the Guy Fawkes face, even though that's just his face.
Yeah. And then he says, please yourself. Like, I feel like you're saying, go jerk off. Go fuck yourself, babe. That was like the nice way to say it, yeah. And so then we get back over here into what's called the Shadow Gallery, which this is like V's...
Batman's cave.
Yeah, his headquarters, his secret hideout. Mm-hmm. And basically he's explaining to her how he has all of the classic literature, all of the classic paintings, music, everything that was basically banned by the government. He has here. He has copies of it here, or maybe even originals, who knows. Mm-hmm. He's got shit here in his little hideout. And how he's basically saying how everything was eradicated. And films, music, everything. And he's playing the songs, and she calls it a Duke box. And he's like, oh no, it's a juke box.
You uncultured swine.
Yeah. he basically says, like, you dumb bitch. Like, it's a juke box.
Yeah.
And he goes on to talk about the song, and he's like, obviously you've never heard of this, peasant, because you weren't allowed.
Yeah, the song is Dancing in the Streets from Martha and the Vandellas, which is a very cool song that it comes into play later in the fucking book, but he talks about, he's like, oh, do you know about Tamla Motown? Yeah. He's like, well, why would you?
Yeah.
All this stuff has been eradicated, some more than others. Some cultures and people have been more eradicated than the others that he makes note.
Yeah, and he was basically alluding to like how, they did a good job on some of them as opposed to the other ones. And then we cut back to, we go to Louis Prothero being in the fucking train, and the fingermen that are essentially protecting him or giving him protection, they basically tell everybody to fuck off out of this car. It's full, and they go along, and they're fucking, going on, and he keeps... he's telling you about the fucking dolls.
Yeah.
Like, Prothero is, like, he is an asshole. He is telling these guys how he just, I got all these dolls, man. Like, most people don't give a shit about dolls, but I do. I got all these dolls, man. I collect all of them, and he's going on to tell about, like, this story. Then he goes on to tell this story about how him and some fucking guy were, like, going to some fucking native village, and they were trying to fuck these ladies or some shit. And as he's telling this story, one of the fingermen looks up and sees V, the silhouette of V above the bridge.
Oh man, it's such a cool fucking panel.
It is cool as shit. It's like he's looking up out the window of the train, and you just see him like perched, like he's about to jump on top of the train. And they go like, what was that? And he's like, you know what? Could have just been some rags caught on a fence. And then V jumps down, and he's like, wait a minute, what was that? He's like, did you guys hear something? It sounded like a fucking bang on the roof. What is going on? And then the lights go out. And then we see V up in the front with the conductor, and the conductor's fucking knocked out. And he goes like, shit, the lights. And so, of course, Prothero can't just shut the fuck up. He's continuing to tell this stupid fucking story. The lights have just gone out. The two guys are like, hey, bro, guns out just in case. And they pull their guns out, their 6-shooters out, and they're chilling. And this dude has horrific fucking firearm safety because he's in the train with his finger on the fucking trigger, and there's no target yet. It's pitch black, can't see shit. And then he says, okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Prothero. Go on, please continue your stupid ass story while we try to fucking save your life and protect you from this unknown threat. And so basically he goes on to tell the story, and he pulls out his fucking pipe, and he's gonna light up his pipe, and he sees one of the guys across from him he's dead, like he's just like murdered. And he's like, what the fuck? And he looks, and who's sitting right next to him, or he goes to look at the other guy, and he's dead too. And then V just pulls up right next to him and goes, oh, hello. And that's it. Then we get basically the next, because that was still November 5th, right?
I think so.
So this is like the next day.
Next day, yeah.
And this guy's just some guys in there basically just like, being a snitch.
So this is Mr. Finch. I forget what department he's part of, but he's trying to hit up the
train conductor, right?
He's like, what's the story, man? What's the scoop? He's like, I don't know, man. I got knocked out because this guy. What did he do?
He touched him on the neck and he said he felt a shock and then just
gave him the Vulcan death grip.
Yep, basically. Fucking knocked his bitch ass out. And he's like, but that's it. That's all I got. And they were like, all right, well, we'll be in contact if we need anything else. And basically, they're going on to talk about how, like, shit, man, this guy's probably a fucking psychopath.
Yeah, he's probably a whack job.
Like, he clearly is a whack job. And they're like, well, we're going to get somebody who isn't normal, and we need to fucking get this shit handled. So they go to the train, and that's when we get chapter 3 of the victims, and they're going through, and they're...
And also note that he spray painted a V on
right behind the window, which is pretty fucking cool. And so they're just like doing their little investigation. They're looking shit up, and he finds a rose, a Violet Carson, and he says, "Oh, funny, I thought they'd been extinct since the war." He said, our friend in the mask has got quite a thing about the letter V, wouldn't you say? And so they're like, well, if we don't find a body in the next couple hours, it looks like you got Prothero too. So we need to fucking...
Let's get cracking.
Yeah, we need to figure this shit out. So we go back to the shadow gallery and we see a person laying in some uniform in a bed. V is standing outside the door and he locks it. And then he goes up his stairs up into the top, and then he goes back up there and he finds Evie like crying and stuff, and she's just like, "Oh man, I didn't thought you were fucking coming back. I thought I was just gonna be here, and I don't know." And she's like, "I'm a stupid little kid," and blah blah blah. And he's just like, trying to figure out more about him, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't have a name. Like you can just call me V." And then she introduces herself to him, and he basically says like, everybody's special. Everybody is a hero, a lover, a fool, a villain. Everybody has their story to tell, even Evie Hammond. And I should very much like to hear Evie Hammond's story. And she goes on to tell him about how, like, her family fucking was living in the city in London or whatever, and they were just basically getting by, and the war broke out. Like, she talks about the war, and basically she's saying about how, like, we didn't know if we were going to get bombed, and my mom just says, Africa's not there anymore. Africa, gone. And she says, I was sad because the lions and the elephants were dead. I was sad. I cried.
Yeah, the interesting part is they talk about, well, maybe it's not maybe it's not Ukraine, but it's Poland and the Russians.
Russia. Which is funny because maybe this Ukraine thing makes Poland fight Russia. Maybe this thing predicts the future. Who knows?
Yeah, and then Kennedy is president.
Yeah.
Once more.
Right.
And UK was holding American missiles, and eventually war broke out and a nuclear holocaust happened, and apparently the weather has been so fucked that London got flooded, and they were going to go move to, I think they were going to go move to the countryside, and it was just as bad. So it's like they didn't really know where to go, and apparently her father was in a communist party or a socialist party, and then he got done in. And
so they talk about how, like, in that meantime, though, they were basically the next 4 years, because she says Europe is also gone too. Like, Europe, Africa, both wiped out essentially because of this war, and they basically go, live in these, like, protection committees is what they call them. And there were, like, roving gangs, there were riots, there was guns, there was all kinds of shit. The government couldn't do anything. And then she said one day, all the fascist right-wing groups got together, and the big corporations got on with them, and they created this thing called Norse Fire. And they basically just marched in, and they just started fucking taking people. Once they got control, what did the first thing they do? They started taking the blacks, the fucking Pakistanis, white people, anyone who was a radical, men who liked other men, homosexuals. I don't know what they did with all of them. And she said that her dad was in a socialist group when he was younger. For him, one September morning in 1993, they came for him. And it was her birthday. I was 12, and I never saw him again. And like her mom had already died of some fucking disease. So like,
Wait, I thought she killed herself. Did she?
he said that there was no food and the
she just
sewers
died.
were
Okay.
flooded
Never
and
mind.
everybody got sick. Mom died in 91.
Okay.
Dad wouldn't let me see her. So now she's on her own, and she gets put to work in this fucking factory putting matches in boxes, man.
And it's called Lucifer.
Yeah.
The brand is Lucifer, which is interesting.
Which is very interesting. And she was saying she was living in a hostel, and she's like, didn't have any food, didn't have any money, and some of the older girls made money by like being hookers. And she's like, that's what I was doing when you found me. Like, but those fucking fingermen, of course I picked the wrong fucking guys. And then that was that. And he basically is like very comforting to her, He's like, oh, don't worry. You're safe. It's all good. Don't worry. We can wipe it all away. And, we can start all over again. And he's like, oh, there, see. She like wipes his face. Oh, see, all gone, And then it says, and Evie Hammond sobs like the child she is. Sobs because at long last, her nightmare is over. Louis Prothero, on the other hand, his nightmare is only just beginning. And then we get to him waking up and he sees this like thing, Lark Hill Resettlement Camp, and it's like this fucking thing and barbed wire and all this shit. And he's like, oh my God. Oh my God.
Well, there was a part I wanted to point out because there's a part where I think Evie alludes to possibly being interested in me. She said something and me, or you and me. Do you remember that part? She said you and me as if they were implying like they were together, or she was going to be her protector or whatever. I don't know where it is.
I think it was earlier.
But anyways, the only reason I was going to bring that up is to bring up like how juvenile she somewhat. Well, it's already been pointed out by the narrator.
Yeah.
The third person narrator. But anyways, so we get to Louis Prothero, and something's afoot. Some fuckery's afoot, and now we have Mr. Finch reporting to the leader, and what the fuck does he find? Oh, the Parliament houses have been fucking destroyed, and Louis Prothero is missing, and what does he say here?
He's basically telling him this guy's a fucking asshole and he's like a psychopath. And he says, and Prothero's saying like, hey, listen, the problem is...
It's the leader.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The leader's telling him, like, the problem with all this shit is that we need you to get fucking we need to get, because he says, can't you just get a stand-in for Prothero? And he's like, no, that's not how this works. People believe that he is the fake computer. Like, that's half of the reason why we have power right now. Mm-hmm. So any deviation from that, any change will fucking start to cause question. And he's like, we cannot have question that right now. And so Finch tells him, I see, from a propaganda angle, we've been put in a bit of a spot, haven't we? Although personally, I don't go much for this new order business. It's just my job. Help Britain out of this mess. You already know that, leader. And the leader tells him, indeed I do, Mr. Finch. You have expressed such sentiments before that you are still alive as a mark of my respect for you and your craft. And then he just tells him basically to fuck off. I have other...
England prevails.
Yeah, England prevails. Fuck off. I have things to do. England prevails. Mr. Finch, and he's like, yes, England prevails, Leda. England prevails.
And Mr. Finch gives him like a fucking dirty ass look. Like he's like, man, fuck you. I can live if I want to. It's my choice.
Yeah, he's like, I'm alive because I'm alive, bitch. Like, come get me, bro.
Back at the Shadow Gallery.
Back to the Shadow Gallery. And V is changing up, and he's getting ready. He's basically getting ready. He's getting dressed, and she's just saying about, oh, your name, it's funny, it's weird, and she's like,
oh, there it is. That was
right here. It's later. Yeah, it was here. Yeah, okay. And then she's like, what are you gonna do? Like, the world's so big, and it's there's just you and me, I suppose. And then he like enforces it or reiterates it. He's like, yeah, you and me, Evie, you and me against the world. Ha ha ha. Melodrama, Evie. Isn't it strange how life turns into melodrama? That's very important to you, isn't it? Or she says, that's very important to you, all this theatrical stuff. And he says, ha, it's everything. The perfect entrance, the grand illusion, it's everything. And I'm going to bring the house down. And basically, we get into this because he says they've forgotten the drama of it all. You see, they've abandoned their scripts when the world withered in the glare of the nuclear footlights. I'm going to remind them about melodrama, about the tuppenny rush and the penny dreadful. You see, Evie, all the world's a stage and everything else is vaudeville. And then he shows up in this fucking suit, like this vaudevillian type suit. And we go back to here and we see Louis Prothero, and we go to chapter 4, vaudeville. And this chapter this part was really cool because V is explaining like the whole backstory of why he even kidnapped this dude. And he's also explaining his own backstory at the same time. Mm-hmm. And he's basically telling him like, oh, hey, Commander, like, you know, is it time? Hey there, Commander. I feel like he's doing it in that voice. Hey there, Commander. Is it time for you to get to work, buddy? Come on, we're here at the camp. Come on, let's go. And he's like, what do you mean? Like, what do he say? He says, let's get to work, shall we? These concentration camps, resettlement camps. They don't run themselves, do they? And he's like, listen, man, I know who you are, but he's like, I don't even know what this is. I've never been there. And he looks at him and he just goes, V goes, Larkhill, 1993. I was there, Commander Prothero. And then he goes, you were there? Oh my God. And he goes back to his fucking, look smart, Commander. We got to make it the tour of inspection now. Remember the way he used to do it every day, every evening, back in the good old days? And he's like, you know, oh, it's all coming back to you. I see. The main body of prisoners would be gathered in the yard awaiting your inspection. You simply had to walk from your office down this path, past these Nissen huts, and turn the corner. And we see this like lineup of prison concentration camp garbed fucking dolls. These porcelain dolls. And Prothero's like, oh, my fucking dolls. What the fuck is going on, man? And he's like, oh, if you've damaged any of them, oh, they're priceless. Hardly any of the big collections survived the war. If you've damaged them, admirable concern, Commander. Yet it's deuced odds, isn't it?
That is such a cool phrase.
It is. Deuced odds, yeah. Man. It's 50-50 basically, right? It's deuced odds. How you can show so much concern for porcelain and plastic and show so little for flesh and blood. You do you remember, Commander? Do you remember when it was people gathered in this sordid little enclosure, people half dead with starvation and dysentery? Goddamn dysentery.
Shitting and dehydration.
Yep. And then you can't even eat. And he's like, listen, man, we did what we did, all right? And he says, but this is Prothero. And he says, we did what we had to do. All the darkies, the Nancy boys, and the beatniks. It was us or them. And that's just showing the level of like propaganda that was going on at this time. And honestly, it is kind of strange when you compare this to now, what's happening now. And you've got, again, an ultra-right, there's some racism, there's some anti-gay shit, and it's like, man, we are inching ever closer towards this.
Yeah, there was a part when the voice of fate said, steel production is up or something. We must make Great Britain great again by meeting these fucking deadlines.
Yes. I was like, holy shit, did Trump rip this shit off from V For Vendetta? Like, god damn, we must make Britain great again, fellas.
Yeah.
And he's like, us or them? Do you understand? Don't you understand? And he says, perfectly. Come along, Commander. Your tour isn't over yet. There's still the special prisoners to see, the ones in the medical compound. Ooh, now it gets spicy. And he goes on to say basically how this is where they were doing their experiments, these science experiments. And he's like, room 1, 2, 3, 4. And he's like, room 5. Room 5. And he's like, room 5. But that was where they kept, oh no. Oh shit, that was you, wasn't it? You were the man from room 5. And he's like, yes, that's right, buddy. And he's like, I remember you used to call out to us sometimes, little jokes you had, a special name for the medical block. You used to call it the funny farm. Remember what a good voice you had? I imagine that's why they picked you to do the Fate broadcasts. A man of many talents, huh, Commander? And then, of course, there was that other little job you used to do. You know, the ovens, Commander. You used to work the ovens. And he's like, oh, no, my dolls, you can't. And all the dolls are just going, mama, mama, mama. He's like, please, I beg you, not my dolls. And he pushes the ignite button and boom, they all fucking go incinerated. And he's just like, no. And then now we go to...
That look of distraught, like...
Yeah, man, that's a great
mentally broken after, and then you see the dolls melting
Yeah,
and shit.
that's hilarious. And then we go back to New Scotland Yard, and you see some, a guy, I guess one of their officers standing outside, and somebody taps him on the shoulder, and he goes, "Huh? Oh, hey, Sarge, it's not the end of my shift already, is it? I was just..." And then it's V, and he's telling him, like, "Shh." And then he just points over somewhere, and he goes, "Huh?" And he goes and he looks, and he's like, "Oh, shit, there's feet. There's just feet hanging out." And he's like, "Oh, God." And he's like, hey there, Sarge. Can you get somebody out here? Because there's some kind of an emergency, I think. I don't know what's going on here." And then they get him back there, and they're right about to have to figure out what they're going to do with these plays or whatever, or the radio broadcast, because they've now run out. And this is where they tell us basically that, They do these things in advance, as we learn in this part, and they say, "Oh, basically we found him, but we found what's left of Prothero, and his face is painted in that like fucking vaudeville face paint or whatever, and he's just going mama, 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 like
PTSD."
This dude's doll collection put him into PTSD, man. This is insane.
Yeah, it's better than death, dude. It's very sick. It's it's very poetic. Poetic justice.
It's fucking very poetic. And basically they're like, "Yeah, I don't know what the fuck we're gonna do, man. We got to figure some shit out." And I think they do make some sort of like adjustment or whatever, right? And he says the voice of fate is recorded 48 hours in advance. The pre-recordings ran out at 10 o'clock. It's now 11. And you just hear, "Good evening, London. This is the voice of fate broadcasting on 275 and 285 in the medium wave."
It was 274 and 284.
Yeah, it was. And then he goes, "And the Capitol listens," and it's saying, the narration saying, "And the Capitol listens. There's something wrong. There is something wrong with the voice of fate." And everybody looks like at the radio like, "The fuck did this? What?" And it says, "Such a small thing to cast such a long and uneasy shadow over the future. For whatever the future holds, one thing is certain. It just won't be the same." And then we see V like fucking jumping off a building or doing some Batman shit.
Doing some Batman shit. Yeah.
And then, man, that's how the issue ends. And man, this is fucking great.
Yeah. It's, I will say, the addition, because I didn't even know he changed masks. Like the fact that he had a whole other segment of him playing like a vaudeville figure is really interesting, because you don't see that in the movies. And granted, I don't think for the sake of time that thing was necessary, but it does add a whole lot to the story about Louis Prothero kind of going down memory lane about some of the shit he would do with the Norse Fire regime or whatever, the cult, or not cult, what is it?
They were like the government agent, or like they
the
were
political
like the
party,
political
whatever.
party, yeah.
And I mean, I don't know if they're alluding to him being gay, but I think that's probably what they're saying, because I think he was trying to project his masculinity, be like, "Oh, I fucked all these bitches." He's like, "Hey, do you guys like dolls?"
yeah.
Most normies don't care about dolls.
Yeah,
but I do.
But let
I'm
me
a
tell you,
cultured son of a bitch.
Let me tell you something about these dolls. All right.
Only real men have butt sex.
Only the most masculine men let other men fuck them in their asshole till they nut. All right.
Yeah. So this is a real cool first issue. It's very dense. There's a lot of characters to keep track of, but I also love the metaphor of the government being an actual like anatomical figure, like the fingerman,
cool
like
shit.
that, the like the black hand that gets after you if you're doing any illegal activities.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
It is. It's fucking awesome. So, anyways, all right. You got anything else to add for this one?
No, I'm looking forward to it. I like the change of pace.
Me too.
It's a nice break from Daredevil and the Hulk, and I'm looking forward to doing more issues of both.
Yeah.
Vader and V For
Vendetta. And V For Vendetta, yeah. So, anyways, we did talk about, we probably are going to do, whenever we finish V For Vendetta, we're probably going to do a co movie or a co-podcast with movies and TV and Game Rage movies and TV, and go watch V For Vendetta and then talk more in detail about the fucking similarities and the differences between the book and the movie, or the comic book and the movie. So, stay tuned for that in the coming months. And anyways, that'll be it. If you want to go listen to our other stuff, you go to GameRageMagazine.com. You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Game Rage Magazine, Twitter /X at Game Rage Mag, YouTube, Game Rage Magazine. If you want to follow Adam, you can follow him at All Gas No Trash Official on Instagram and go listen to All Gas No Trash the podcast. And if you want to listen to anime and mangas, you can go listen to the Anime Syndicate podcast, and you can go follow Frank at anime_syndicate_podcast. And if you like Star Wars, do us a favor, go listen to the latest episode of the Game Rage Star Wars podcast, because we're bringing it back and we're trying to get 15 downloads in the first 7 days. So I think that shouldn't be a problem. I set the bar real low, but fuck it, go listen to it anyways. Pump it up. Let's see how high we can get those numbers. Anyways, that'll be it for us. Catch you guys on the next one.
That was Panel to Panel, the Game Rage Magazine comic book podcast. Thanks for listening. If you want to know more and follow along, go to Instagram and TikTok. Follow at Game Rage Magazine. If you want to follow on Twitter/X at Game Rage Mag. Tune in next time.